welcome back! If you haven't been here before, my name is Kim, and this is the space where we do science experiments from home. So you may or may not know, but last week was Earth Day, and so on that day we like to celebrate things like sustainability and environmental causes that people are really championing for or working on. And so I thought it'd be fun to do a little bit of a plant kind of experiment at home. So we're going to make closed terrariums, and closed terrariums are cool because they're largely self-sufficient, so they're able to do their own self-watering and their own gas exchange to keep themselves healthy, and it requires very minimal effort on our behalf. So, you know, it's kind of like having a pet, except for nothing like having a pet because it's way less hard and there's less poop. The first thing you're going to need is the jar. You can also do it with, if you have a plastic bottle at home, something like that. As long as it has a lid, we can work with it. We're going to need little rocks, so they can be like little, just like marble-sized rocks, and we're going to put those in the bottom. We're also going to need some soil, so any kind of planting soil is totally fine. The other thing that we need, and this one's a little bit trickier, is we're going to need activated carbon. Basically what the activated carbon is going to do is it's going to remove any of the toxins from the water or from the soil to keep our closed terrarium healthy. Next, you're going to need some plants. Now, it's important that we get plants that are going to be able to coexist well together. For example, something like a cactus doesn't need very much water, whereas something like a fern needs quite a bit of water, so those wouldn't be able to coexist or grow very well together. So the last thing we're going to need is some decorations, and you can probably find these just around your house, maybe around your yard. So I got a pine cone, a rock, some other little things, and I got some little toys that I'm going to put in there too. Okay, so now we can get started. So the reason that we're going to be putting rocks in there is to allow for soil drainage. And it really helps so that our roots of our plants don't get waterlogged. So the goal is to have about an inch or so of rocks in the bottom to allow the soil to drain. The next step, now that we have our rocks in there, is we're going to add our activated charcoal. So you can get this, I got it on Amazon for like $3, but you can also get it from pet stores because people use it for their aquariums. And you want about ½ an inch of activated charcoal. Okay, so once we have our activated charcoal in there, the next thing that we're going to do is put our soil on top. And you're going to want to fill the jar, or whatever kind of container you're using, about half filled with soil. Someone remind me why I use white tablecloths. Not the best idea ever. Okay, so now we have our soil in there, so it's filled, you know, about halfway. So now comes the fun part. We get to plant our plants in there. So as was mentioned, I chose all plants that kind of would be able to coexist together. So they all need about the same level of water, and they also all need about the same amount of sunlight. So yeah, so now we're gonna plant. You don't need this many plants. You can put one plant in. But I'm just a little bit extra. So I put some extra plants in. Let's just change it up and do an experiment that doesn't make a huge mess. But what would the fun be in that? So now, depending on your plants, so if you're doing like cactuses or something like that, they're not going to really need a lot of water. But I'm going to water my plants now because they all like the earth to be a little bit moist. I realized my audience in that moment and realized that was not a good excuse to use the word moist. So another cool thing about a closed terrarium is that it's going to be doing the water cycle by itself inside the jar. So the first thing that's going to happen is transpiration. So the water is going to be taken up from the soil and into the roots of the plant and then into the leaves. Then evaporation is going to happen, which is the process where water turns from a liquid into a gas, and it's going to go up into the jar. And since it can't escape, the next step is going to be condensation. And so that water is going to stick to the sides of the jar. And so you might see sometimes it getting a little bit foggy in there, or you see some water along the sides, and that just means that process is working. And then the last thing that's going to happen is precipitation. And so it's going to get too heavy on the sides of the jar for that water to hold on, and so it's going to slowly slide down the sides of the jar into the soil. Whole process is going to start again, which is pretty cool. So the next step that you're going to do is you're going to add your fun objects inside. So I'm just going to do a little bit of decorations, do some little interior designing. So you might be thinking, oh my gosh, well how are they going to exist in there if they can't even breathe? Green plants are able to take carbon dioxide from the environment and turn them into oxygen. So that's going to be happening within the terrarium. So how do you take care of it now that you have it? So the nice thing, as I mentioned, is that they don't really need to be watered. You might need to water it maybe like every few months or maybe even once a year, but just check on the soil and see how it's doing in there. Additionally, you can just leave it closed and it'll be okay, but it's always nice to just let a little bit of fresh air in there, so you might want to open your container every once in a while, just let some fresh air in, and that'll just be good for your plants overall. So that was our fun kind of Earth Day activity today. I hope you had a lot of fun doing it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Hi, it's Cruz. We're going to blow up a balloon through a chemical reaction.